My dream was their favorite joke. For years, I let them laugh, until the night I walked on stage. What happened next silenced them all, and it changed me forever. People laughed the first time I said I wanted to be on stage someday. Not the kind of laugh that says, "I believe in you." No, it was the cruel kind. The kind that stays with you years after the noise fades. That laugh still echoes in my head sometimes, even now. I was 8 years old, sitting in the back row of Mrs. Taylor's third-grade class when we went around the circle saying what we wanted to be when we grew up. Firefighter, astronaut, teacher. Then it got to me. I said, plain as day, "I want to be a performer." The kid next to me snorted. A couple of others giggled. Even Mrs. Taylor did this thing where her eyes went wide like she was surprised, then quickly smiled like she was trying to hide it. I wish I could say that was the worst of it, but that was just the beginning. By the time I hit middle school, it had become a running joke. Kids would mock the way I spoke when I read aloud, say my voice cracked like a broken speaker. I once stayed up all night practicing for the school talent show. It was just a simple monologue from a movie I loved, nothing fancy. I poured everything into it. My hands shook when I stepped onto that little gymnasium stage. The audience? Mostly students, teachers, and some parents. But it felt like a stadium. And when I stumbled on a line halfway through, they laughed. Not all of them, but enough. I still remember a boy named Brent shouting, "Try again, theater boy," and the crowd erupting like that was the funniest thing they had heard all year. After that, I stopped auditioning. I told people I was over it, that it was just a phase. But I never stopped dreaming. I just stopped talking about it. At home, things were no better. My dad thought anything artsy was a waste of time. "You need to focus on real things," he would say, flipping through bills. "Performance does not put food on the table." My older sister once caught me practicing in the mirror with a hairbrush mic. She stood there watching just long enough for me to notice, then burst out laughing. She told my cousins. It became another joke, "Mike Man." They said I looked like I was pretending to be famous just so I could forget how average I was. Eventually, I believed them. I stopped telling anyone what I was working on. But I never stopped practicing. Late at night, I would sit in front of a cracked mirror in the garage, whispering lines until I had them perfect. I watched videos of speakers, singers, stage actors, anyone who could hold a crowd, and studied their every move. I worked on my voice until it no longer cracked. I recorded myself, hated how I sounded, and kept going until I could stand it. Some nights I would stare at the ceiling and wonder if they were right. Maybe I really was just pretending. Maybe I was not cut out for this. But I could never shake the feeling that one day, I would be on a stage again. I just never expected who would be sitting in the audience. And I definitely never expected what would happen when they saw me. There is this memory I cannot seem to shake. 8th grade. Rainy Tuesday. I had just finished writing a piece for our English class. It was a performance piece. Spoken word. About loneliness. I had never shown anyone my writing before. But this time, I let my teacher read it. She gave it back the next day with a red mark on the top that said, "Nice effort, but maybe try something more realistic next time." Realistic. That word started following me around like a ghost. Everyone used it. My uncle used it when I told him I wanted to audition for a local showcase. My mom used it when she caught me rehearsing in the basement and asked if I had applied to any trade schools instead. Realistic became a polite way of saying you will not make it. So, I did what people like me do. I smiled, nodded, and quietly took every bit of that shame and buried it somewhere deep. But it did not stay buried. It crept out at night when everything else was quiet. That was when the real war started, between the voice inside me that said keep going and the louder one that whispered they are right. I lost count of how many nights I stayed up late in our freezing garage, rehearsing while everyone else slept. I used a stack of old pizza boxes as a makeshift stage. A broken lamp became my spotlight. I stood there barefoot, speaking into the darkness, pretending someone was listening. And even though no one was, I kept speaking anyway. There was this one night I remember clear as day. My dad had come home drunk, slammed the back door hard enough to shake the garage walls. I froze mid-sentence, standing there holding that stupid broomstick I used as a prop. He did not say a word, just stared at me for a few seconds, shook his head, and said, "You really think this crap is going to take you anywhere?" Then he turned and left. I did not cry. Not then. I waited until I heard the front door slam again before I sank to the concrete floor and let it hit me. The shame, the doubt, the silence. That kind of silence feels heavier than any scream. After that, I stopped rehearsing out loud. I started whispering lines to myself under the covers, mouthing words until my jaw hurt. I practiced facial expressions in bathroom mirrors and watched my shadow act out scenes when the power went out. I became my own teacher, my own audience, my own critic. The world had already made it clear I was not enough. But deep down, something in me would not give up. Then, one day, I got an email. And just like that, everything started to shift. I almost deleted the email. It came in on a Thursday afternoon while I was sitting in the back room of the supply store where I worked. My shift was dragging. I had just finished stacking boxes of printer paper and was wiping sweat off my forehead when my phone buzzed. The subject line said, "Open Mic Showcase Invitation, Final Round Selections." I thought it was spam at first. I had forgotten I even sent in the video. A month earlier, I had recorded a performance on my phone, one of my old spoken word pieces. I did it on a whim after reading about an upcoming regional talent showcase. One shot, no edits, just me in a plain hoodie standing in front of my bedroom wall. The lighting was awful. I almost did not send it, but I guess I did. And now, here it was. The reply. My hands were shaking a little as I tapped it open. The message said I had made it into the final showcase lineup. It was set for a Saturday night, 2 weeks away. Theater downtown. Real stage. Real audience. I read the email 3 times before it sank in. I sat there in the silence of that supply closet, surrounded by dusty toner cartridges and busted label printers, just staring at the screen. I should have been happy. I should have been over the moon. But all I felt in that moment was fear. Fear that it was a mistake. That they would email back saying, "Sorry, wrong person." Or worse, that I would go up there and prove everyone right. Still, I said yes. I sent back my confirmation and added the date to my phone calendar. The moment I hit send, my stomach flipped. This was it. After years of hiding, years of practicing in shadows, I had a chance. That night, I could not sleep. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, thinking about every time someone told me I would fail. Every smirk, every laugh, every family dinner where someone asked if I was still chasing that hobby. And then, the kicker. The next day, the event page went live. They listed the performers, my name, my photo, and just under the list of attendees, I saw something that made my blood run cold. 3 familiar names. Brent Michaels, my old classmate, the same guy who shouted at me during the talent show in 8th grade. Jessica Lang, my cousin, the one who once called my dreams a weird little phase. And the last one, my sister, Julia. They had RSVP'd. They were coming. I stared at that list of names for a long time. It felt like someone had sucker punched me in the gut. Why were they coming? I had not spoken to Julia in over a year. Last time we were in the same room, she made a crack in front of our cousins that I was still living in Fantasyland, chasing some stage dream that never left the garage. Everyone laughed. I did not. Brent. I had not seen him since high school graduation, but his laugh still haunted me. That slow, dragging chuckle he used to do whenever I walked into a room. "Here comes Broadway," he would mutter every single time. I still hated how those 2 words made me feel small. And Jessica, God, Jessica. She was my cousin, yeah, but she treated me like some charity case. The way she would tilt her head when asking about my creative projects, like she was speaking to a child holding crayons. One Thanksgiving, she straight up told me that performing was cute, but that I should grow up and get a life. So why were they coming now? Maybe they thought I would crash and burn. Maybe they wanted one last laugh. That night, I went back into the garage for the first time in months. The same broken lamp. The same sagging mirror taped to the wall. My old broomstick prop, still leaning in the corner. I closed the door behind me and stood in the center, like I had done 100 times before. But this time, I could not move. Could not speak. My mouth felt dry. My heart was pounding. I imagined them sitting in the crowd. Brent smirking. Jessica sipping wine. Julia whispering something under her breath with a smug look on her face. And suddenly, I was 10 years old again. Frozen. Embarrassed. Afraid. I sat down on the floor, my back against the cold concrete, and stared at the ceiling. What was I doing? Why had I said yes? The thoughts came fast and hard. You are not ready. You are not good enough. They are all going to laugh again. But then I remembered something. A quote I once scribbled on the inside of an old notebook. I did not know where it came from, but I had written it when I was 16 and kept it for years. They will not believe until they see. So show them. I stood up. I picked up the broomstick. Not as a prop this time, just to have something in my hand. And I started rehearsing. That night, I stumbled over every line. But the next night, I was sharper. By the 5th night, I was better than I had ever been. And by the 7th night, I was ready. At least, I thought I was. Then the night of the show came. And nothing could have prepared me for what happened backstage. The backstage hallway smelled like old velvet and nerves. I had never been inside a real theater like this before. Not from the performer's side, anyway. The stagehands were moving with purpose, headsets on, whispering cues. Lights hummed overhead. Somewhere far off, a piano was being tuned. Every sound felt louder than it should have been. I was standing in the green room, pacing in slow circles. Hands clammy, mind racing. The stage was just a few minutes away. And then the door opened. A guy walked in, tall, maybe mid-30s, with a clipboard in one hand and a badge around his neck. He was one of the organizers. I had seen his name in the emails, Tyler something. "You're up third," he said. "Crowd's big tonight. House is packed. You good?" I nodded, even though my throat was dry as sandpaper. Then he looked at me again, closer this time. He pointed toward my name tag on the dressing table. "Hold on. You're Nate Holloway?" "Yeah," I said, hesitating. He blinked. "That name. You went to Ridgeview Middle?" My heart sank a little. "Yeah. Why?" He let out a short laugh, one of those surprised, breathy laughs that sound like a cough. "Man, you probably do not remember me. I was 2 grades ahead. But I remember you." I forced a smile. "Cool." He grinned wider. "You were the kid who bombed the 8th grade talent show." My stomach dropped. The air went cold. I tried to laugh it off, but my mouth would not cooperate. "Dude," he went on, clearly enjoying the moment. "I still remember Brent's joke. What was it? Theater boy, right?" He chuckled. That was brutal. I did not say a word. I just stared at him, my jaw tight. He caught the change in my expression. "Hey, I'm just messing around. I'm sure you'll do great out there tonight." Then he gave me a wink like it was all fine and walked out, still chuckling under his breath. I stood there frozen, the air suddenly too thick to breathe. All this time, all these years, and that moment, that one damn moment, was still what people remembered me for? I looked at myself in the mirror. The boy who got laughed off stage. That was still who they saw. And now, I was supposed to go out there and perform. In front of a crowd that included the very people who helped shape every ounce of my self-doubt. I nearly walked out. I almost grabbed my coat and left without a word. But something stopped me. It was not pride. It was not even anger. It was something colder, sharper. I did not come here to be liked. I came here to be heard. And as they called my name over the intercom, I stepped out of the green room, straight into the spotlight. But the moment I saw who was sitting in the front row, everything I thought I knew about this night turned upside down. The stage lights hit harder than I expected. They were blinding, like staring into the sun, but from behind that glow, I could still see the front rows clearly. That is when I spotted them. Julia, my sister, right there, dead center. Her arms were crossed. Her expression unreadable, but I knew that look. The one she used to give me when I said something too embarrassing at dinner. She wore it like armor. 2 seats down was Brent. Still had that same smug slouch, legs spread wide, like the room owed him something. His arms were draped over the back of the chair next to him, talking to someone out of frame like none of this was worth his time. And then, off to the right, Jessica, in a sharp blazer, phone in her lap, pretending not to look up. It was like someone had gone back and pulled characters out of the darkest parts of my memory and stuck them right there in the front row. But it was not just them. My stomach clenched tighter. Because there, just a few seats behind, was my mother. I did not even know she knew about this. She looked older than I remembered. A little thinner, like time had been wearing her down more than she would ever admit. And sitting beside her, hands folded neatly in his lap, was my father. He was not clapping, was not even smiling, just watching, straight-faced, almost blank. He had not come to my high school graduation, said it was too hot for nonsense. He had not called me in 3 years. And yet, there he was. The entire weight of my childhood was seated less than 20 feet away, and I was standing alone on a stage with a microphone. I felt my legs go stiff. My fingers twitched. My breath came short and fast. The MC's voice echoed behind me. Up next, performing an original spoken word piece. Give it up for Nate Holloway. The applause was polite. Not huge. Not hostile. Just noise. I stepped forward, heartbeat hammering behind my ribs like it was trying to break out. And just before I reached the mic, I heard it. A whisper. Not loud, but clear. Brent, muttering something to the person beside him. I could not hear the words, but I saw the smirk. The shake of the head. Still a joke to him. I almost lost it. But then I remembered something. A detail I had not caught before. My sister? She was not sitting alone. Next to her was her daughter. My niece. Maybe 10 years old. Staring up at me wide-eyed, knees tucked to her chest. And suddenly, everything felt different. This was not about proving them wrong anymore. This was about proving something true. So I stepped to the mic. And I opened my mouth. And then, the power cut out. The room went black. For a few seconds, nobody moved. The only sound was a soft gasp somewhere near the back. Then whispers. A few coughs. The shuffle of chairs. I stood frozen on stage, hands gripping the mic stand, staring into the void. Was this happening? I looked toward the tech booth, barely able to make out their silhouettes. Flashlights clicked on. A couple of volunteers were already scrambling. Some emergency lights kicked in, dim red glows lining the floor like runway lights in an old movie. But the main lights? Still out. The MC stepped onto the stage, his voice awkward. Folks, just a moment. Looks like we're having some technical issues. Please stay seated. People started murmuring. A few laughed nervously. I saw Brent lean back and stretch like he was already bored again. Julia reached for her phone. My father rubbed his eyes like he could not believe he had left the house for this. I stood there, caught between two choices. I could step back. Wait. Hide behind the glitch. Let them forget. Or, I looked down at the mic. It was still live. A small green light blinked near the base. Maybe fate had given me an out, but I was not taking it. I took a deep breath, stepped forward until I was just a shape in the red glow, and I spoke. No sound system. No spotlight. Just my voice, low and raw. I never needed perfect lighting, I said, loud enough for the front rows to hear. And I never needed approval from people who never saw me. Some heads turned. I used to think silence meant failure. That when nobody clapped, it meant I had messed up. But now, I get it. I paused, letting the quiet settle. The silence was just room for me to speak. The crowd hushed. Even Brent turned his head. I launched into my piece. Not at full volume. Not in the way I had rehearsed. But with something else, control. The words poured out steady, sharp. Each one carried years of weight behind it. I spoke about being forgotten at the dinner table. About hearing your name used as a punchline. About hiding your hopes in notebooks you never showed anyone because you already knew the ending they would write for you. I spoke about dreams they said were too fragile, too foolish, too loud for someone like me. And then I said this. You only laughed because you were scared. Not of me, but of what it meant if I was right about myself. Dead quiet. Even in the dark, I could feel their eyes. Could feel something shifting in the room. I did not need a spotlight. I was the light. When the house lights finally flicked back on mid-sentence, I did not stop. And that was when I saw it. My sister's eyes wet. Brent. His arms were no longer draped like a king. He was leaning forward, lips parted like he had forgotten to breathe. Jessica looked down at her lap, avoiding eye contact altogether. And my father? For the first time in my life, he was not blank. He looked stunned, like he had just seen something he could not explain. But that was not the biggest shock. Because in the back corner of the room, near the side door, someone else had arrived. Someone who was never supposed to be there. And the second I locked eyes with him, my entire body went cold. He stood just inside the doorway, arms crossed, baseball cap pulled low. He had not aged much, just thicker around the middle, a little gray in the beard. But I knew exactly who it was. Mr. Daly, my old drama teacher. I had not seen him since 10th grade, the year he cut me from the spring play. Said I lacked presence. He told me it was nothing personal, but some kids just aren't meant for the spotlight. I still remember the way his voice dipped with pity, the way he gently patted my shoulder and told me I should try something more practical. I had cried in the boys' bathroom after that audition, locked myself in a stall, chest heaving in silent sobs, trying to muffle the sound with my hoodie sleeve. I never auditioned again. And now, after all these years, he was here, watching me. His face was unreadable, somewhere between curiosity and disbelief. I stumbled for a beat, lost in the weight of that moment. Then I swallowed hard and pushed through the last lines of my piece. When I finished, the silence that followed was not awkward. It was heavy, The kind of silence you can feel in your bones. The kind that makes people afraid to clap too soon. Then, like a spark, someone in the back stood up. Applause started slowly. 1 or 2 hands. Then 5. Then 10. And then it hit full force. The whole room was on their feet. Brent did not clap right away. But when he saw the crowd rising, he finally stood too. Awkwardly, hands barely touching as he clapped like a man waking up from a dream. Jessica was crying, wiping her face with the back of her sleeve. Julia? She had her hand over her mouth, like she had just watched a ghost walk through the wall. But it was my father who froze me. He stood, silent, still. Then, he nodded. Not a big gesture. Not dramatic. Just a slow, firm nod. As if to say you were right. I nearly broke right there on stage. But I held it in. Held it all together until I got backstage, where I collapsed into a metal folding chair and let the tears fall, silent and furious, into my hands. I had waited my entire life for that moment. But it was not pride I felt. It was release. The weight I had carried since childhood, every laugh, every whisper, every eye roll and mocking comment, finally snapped loose. And then, the door creaked open again. It was Mr. Daly. He looked at me for a long second, then stepped forward. I was wrong, he said. That was it. Just those 3 words. And then he turned and walked away. I sat there in the green room long after the crowd had cleared. My throat still ached from the performance. My hands trembled like they did not know the fight was over. Someone had left a bottle of water on the table. I opened it, took a slow sip, and finally looked at myself in the mirror. Same face, but something behind the eyes had changed. For years, I had imagined that moment, being heard, being seen, being taken seriously. I thought it would feel like victory, like fireworks and music swelling in the background. But really? It just felt quiet, not empty, not disappointing, just peaceful, like finally stepping out of a long tunnel and realizing the light at the end was not some miracle. It was just you, still walking, still breathing, still standing. There was a knock at the door. I wiped my face with my sleeve and cleared my throat. Yeah. The door opened. Julia stepped in. She looked hesitant, like she was not sure if I would slam the door in her face. She started, then looked down. I didn't expect that. I did not say anything. I let the silence do the work. She finally looked up. You were amazing. I mean it. Her voice cracked a little. She reached into her bag and pulled something out, a folded piece of paper. Do you remember this? She asked. I took it from her hands and unfolded it. It was an old drawing. Crayon. A stage, a microphone, and a little stick figure with my name written in shaky bubble letters. I found it last week in a box from Mom's attic, she said. You made it when you were, like, 9. You made me keep it because you said you'd be famous one day and didn't want to lose it. I stared at it for a long time. I thought it was a joke, she admitted. Back then, we all did. She bit her lip. I'm sorry. I looked up at her. The words hung in the air. She meant it. I could see it in her eyes. Thanks, I said. That means something. She nodded, then stepped back out into the hallway. More people came by, one by one. Jessica, Brent, even my mother. Each of them with some version of the same expression, remorse, maybe even respect. But the biggest surprise came when I stepped outside the building. Someone was waiting there, sitting on the stairs in the dark. A young man, probably 19 or 20, holding a folded-up program from the show. He stood when he saw me. Hey, he said awkwardly. Sorry if this is weird, but that piece you did? That was me. Not literally, but it felt like you were saying all the stuff I've never been able to say. I nodded, unsure what to say back. Then he asked something I did not expect. Could you teach me? Not like lessons or anything. Just how you did it. How you stood up there and said all that. I felt a chill crawl up my arms. Not fear. Something else. Purpose. Yeah, I said. Yeah, I can. And in that moment, I realized. This story was never just mine. 2 weeks later, I walked past the same theater where it all happened. The poster for the showcase was still up in the glass display case, weather-worn at the corners. My name was listed 3rd from the top. Funny how something so small could carry so much. I stood there for a moment, watching people pass by. No one noticed me. No one pointed. And that was fine. I had spent most of my life craving recognition, like it was the only thing that would make me real. But now I knew the truth. You do not need applause to be valid. You do not need to be seen by the world to be real. You just need one moment. One moment when you show up anyway, when your voice shakes, but you speak, when your hands tremble, but you reach, when they laugh, but you keep walking. That moment on stage was not just a performance. It was proof. Proof that I had been right to believe in something no one else could see. I walked to the corner where a small group had gathered. A few local artists had started hosting weekly open mics outside the theater. Kids reading poetry, older folks singing blues, one guy juggling fire. No rules, no tickets, just people sharing whatever they had. The same kid who stopped me after the show, Luca, was there. He spotted me and waved. He was going up in 10 minutes. Nervous, but excited. He had written something new. He asked me to stand in the back, just so he would know I was there. So I did. He stepped up to the mic, cleared his throat, looked at the paper shaking in his hands. Then he looked out into the crowd, and I saw that moment, that flicker of fear, followed by a decision. He spoke. His voice cracked on the first line. Nobody laughed. And when he finished, the whole block lit up with applause. Not because he was perfect, but because he was brave. I smiled, then turned and started walking home. As I reached the crosswalk, a voice from behind me called out, "Hey, Nate." I turned. It was Julia, holding a coffee in one hand and her daughter's backpack in the other. "You were really something up there," she said, jogging to catch up. I nodded. "Took me long enough." She smiled. "Still worth it." We stood there in the quiet for a second. Then her daughter, the one who had sat next to her that night, looked up at me and said, "Are you famous?" I laughed. "Not really." She frowned. But everyone clapped. "Yeah," I said. "They did." She thought about that, then shrugged like it made sense. The light turned green, and they crossed ahead of me. I stood there a second longer, letting the weight of everything that had led me here finally fall away. The laughter, the silence, the doubt, all of it. Because sometimes, the people who laughed at you are the ones who needed you to fail just to feel okay with giving up. But if you keep going, if you keep walking, keep speaking, keep showing up, there comes a day when they stop laughing. And they start listening. And that, right there, is the moment the story flips. For good.